In our YCM YouTube channel. Today we have Ms.Supriya Chawla, the head of the Chevening Scholarships India at the British High Commission. We are so glad that you could be a part of this interview and give us your precious time. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure, Shreyas, and a very good evening to your audience as well. And it's lovely to be speaking here in this platform. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So I think I would like to just like to briefly let our viewers know that today's theme is of this interview's theme is of importance of networking and building sustainable networks. And I think, ma'am, firstly, I would like to ask you let's start with some of the basic questions as to what do you think is networking and how does it differ from, let's say, us making friends and acquaintances? How does networking differ from that?
Shreyas, that's a good question, and I think important that the two are not confused with one another. So definitely some differences there, but I think the border is quite fluid. So people from one group can very easily slip into the other group as well. Both networking and friends, they're meant to support, inform, provide insight and resources, but in slightly different ways. So there is a certain structure to the way that we network, and we need to strategize. But when we make friends, the last thing on our minds is strategy. Yeah. So friendships develop a lot more spontaneously and mostly without an intention, really. So coming back to the first part of your question is what is networking? I believe it is connecting and engaging with people, always keeping an open mind. So the drive is personal. So a new job, someone could be looking for one or may have one to offer, broadening the professional horizon. Someone could be a connector, trying to bring the right set of people together, which is very valuable in networking. Or you could just be there for insights, information about a new business idea. But whatever your drive or purpose, let that recede into the background when you network. So strategize and plan only to ensure that you are in the right place and you understand your goals. But when you are around people, I think it's very important to be easy on yourself. Try and have fun, share experiences. Don't try and hard sell yourself. Be generous, listen to others. And I think above all, just be warm, honest, and just be yourself. So, and if you make friends in the process, I think that's a huge bonus. And also acquaintances, actually, if I can just also briefly touch upon acquaintances. Now, this is a group that we often take a lot for granted. So people that we meet every day, in the office corridors or during our early morning walks near home. So a nod or a smile is all that we ever offer. And my advice would be that don't take them for granted. So if you are in a safe space, strike up a conversation. In fact, my first internship, I'd like to share here, that was with someone that I used to share an early morning bus ride with when I was in the first year of my college. He was the head of the publication division at the Children's Book Trust, and I found that out eventually. We just struck a conversation in the bus, and there were no expectations. And a couple of days later, I had a job. So yeah.
Yes, ma'am. It's quite interesting to look at the differences between making friends and acquaintances and how being strategic is also important. I think, ma'am, that also leads us to our second question as you have already briefly mentioned as the differences between making friends and acquaintances and networking. I'm sure that there are also some myths that are there about networking that we all have encountered. So what are some myths about networking that you think are the most prevalent around you?
I think the most common one is that it is insincere and manipulative. It's like trading favors with strangers. There is no strategy to networking. So you either have it in you or you don't. That networking is only for extroverts. I think my experience and ability will carry me far, not my networks. That's a lot of what a lot of people think. Handing out business cards, people think is networking. It's not. The more people you have in your network, the better is your network. Once again, that's a myth. And you engage with your network only when you're looking for a job is also a complete myth. So I think those would be on the top of my list.
Yes, ma'am. And I think, again, building up on one of the myths that you have said, I think it's one of these famous statements that we hear in movies, in everywhere, is the statement that it's not what you know, but who you know that matters. To what extent do you agree with this statement? Do you think that rather than focusing on of course, we need to be competitive, but then do you also think that we should now slowly start being competitive in terms of networking as well?
So I think it's an interesting phrase, but sadly, very often it describes dejection and frustration. So someone didn't get a promotion, even though she deserved it. So it's because it's not what you know, but who you know. Someone else gets it, not because she's good, but because it's not what you know, but who you know. I think it kind of ends up being very frustrating when you hear a statement like that. But I have a slightly a different take on this, and I think it's a perfect mishmash of what you know and who you know. So when we first start out in our jobs, for example, as managers or as specialists, doing our small little job in one corner of the organization, the focus is very nose to the grindstone. We complete our day-to-day work. We meet objectives that are mostly defined by others, by people who lead us. But as we grow and we take on leadership roles, the functional specialities, then they are replaced by more strategic matters. And that's when relationships start to matter. So when you have a vision, for example, and you need the right stakeholders as well to make it come true, you can't hire everyone. And so that's when you reach out to your contacts for policy advice, for legal advice, for information, knowledge sharing. And what you know is critical, and that will take you only that far. And so that's when the networks become critical. But if you are not good at what you do, then the networks can also carry you only that far. So I believe it's not about who you know and not what you know. I believe it's more about what you know and who you know. So one is not more important than the other.
Yes, ma'am. And I also believe that to be able to truly make the most out of your network, I think it also depends on how much you know. Yes, ma'am. And ma'am, so of course, I don't think that we can talk about anything without bringing the pandemic these days. So, ma'am, how do you think has the COVID pandemic changed networking, either for the better or for the worse?
So I think there was this myth at all times that networking was only possible in a face-to-face situation, and that has definitely been dealt a blow during the pandemic. So geography, where you are located, means nothing more, and that's a great thing actually. So if I speak for myself, I knew more people than I thought I knew, and the pandemic gave me a chance to kind of deepen some of the relationships that had so far existed on a superficial basis because these people were really far away from me and I couldn't connect with them that easily. And suddenly I found that there were no borders. I could just pick up the phone and could do calls on Teams, just like we are doing right now, Shreyas. I could just zoom in and call someone else and share a coffee or a lunch together, even if it was through a digital medium. So, and then I realized how little I knew about so many of them who were actually a part of my already existing network. So here's another thing I also learned in the process that is not about the quantity, but it is about quality. And networks are not stagnant. They are in a constant change of state of flux and change. So, and we have to grow with our networks. We have to stay engaged with our networks. And I think the pandemic has really brought people and the whole world together. We've cherished relationships like we have never before. And we've understood the importance of reaching out to others and kind of staying in touch as well.
Yes, ma'am, definitely. Yes, ma'am. And now I think I'd also like to ask you as to about how college students can, network with experts, because as a college student, reaching out to experts is quite intimidating, and we can also anticipate that thousands of college students are reaching out to experts and trying to network with experts. So, how do you think a college student with not much networking experience can slowly start to network with experts and people in their field?
Yeah, I think that's a Okay, once again, a very good question. And I speak for myself when I say that networking is perhaps the last thing, was the last thing on my mind when I was in college. Now I kind of wish it wasn't. And I often get this question asked also when I speak in colleges and when I make some presentations, etc. And I'm with young people. I think most colleges to start with have college alumni network events. It's the perfect place to network. You will find your experts in that group to begin with. It's this range of interests and experience. And alumni look out for each other, and nobody's a stranger. It's easy to kind of just approach somebody and start up a conversation. Great place to kick off networking. So try and be a part of these events. If your college does not have one, I would say just take the initiative and try and arrange one to start with. I would also suggest speak with your teachers, your professors. They may be able to connect you to alumni or to some experts in the industry. They could offer you some interesting insights as well about the industry. Social media is big, so try and build an online presence, write a blog, express an opinion. And the reason I say all of this, even though I know you kind of alluded to interacting with the experts here, is because I feel that the more you read and learn, the more comfortable you will be when you meet people or experts. So you need to be confident, but you have to be yourself when you approach someone. Show interest and listen and learn. I think everybody values a good listener. So ask good questions, what they do, what makes them tick, what's the one thing that they're most proud of, and if there are any lessons for a young professional like you, and just so on and so forth. So be polite, always thank people for the time that they have spent with you. A written message, follow it up with a written message or an email, which is key to sustaining your networks. Don't get too picky or choosy, meet as many people as you possibly can. And I think one other important thing which all of us get very worried about is that if you have an ask, if you have met an expert and you have an ask, just ask. Don't beat around the bush. If you need an internship or if you need advice, I mean, let people know what is it that you want, what your skills are. So be clear, direct. I think everyone really appreciates that.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, so while you have mentioned, that we need to learn and we need to be very knowledgeable about the field that we are trying to network in. Would you mention a few more soft skills that we need to work on to be the best networker that we can be?
Yeah. So Shiraz, just one point in about what you said. So you don't have to be knowledgeable necessarily when you meet experts, but you need to do some kind of research so that you're able to ask the right set of questions. So I'm not saying that that prepares so much that you need to know as much as the person out there who you are hoping to network with knows, but just I think to ask intelligent questions, you need to do some research, and so you need to plan. As far as this question of yours about some of the other skills, actually, in addition to the ones that I've already mentioned, is I think one is that be unpretentious. Just believe in yourself, be respectful, polite, communicate well, talk and listen, and make sure that you strike the right kind of balance. And don't forget, very important, don't forget the non-verbal communication, your body language, your expressions. Sometimes they say a lot more about you than your words. Yes. So I recollect we were given this exercise once to share our happiest moment with a colleague. And that set of colleagues who were supposed to have listened to us, they were separately instructed to act entirely disinterested. So, they were fidgety, they kept looking at their mobile and they didn't make eye contact. And all of this while, even though we knew it was an exercise, those of us who were actually narrating our happiest moment, we started to get really, really furious and we clammed up. So it was really funny. And here we were trying to talk about our happiest moments. And here we were feeling absolutely furious because of the body language of somebody who was listening or not listening to us. So watch out for body language. That's extremely important. And I think it's also important to be there for people. So let them see, that there is that this is where you want to be. and you would rather be here than in any other part of the room. Because if you've noticed that when we are in a situation where there are loads of people that we have to meet, we constantly keep looking around to see who else after this, who else can I approach? And that's wrong. When you are there talking to somebody, just be there and speak to that person. And of course, a very important skill is like I mentioned earlier as well, be responsive, return calls and respond to mails quickly as well.
Yes, ma'am. I think, these skills are extremely important. And sometimes I think we kind of overlook the importance of these soft skills. Ma'am, so I think, but in our discussion, we do realize that we do need to try to put ourselves out there, out of our comfort zones to network with people. So which I think is relatively easier for extroverted people who really enjoy talking, interacting with people. So when I usually talk about networking with my friends, their first excuse, let's not call it excuse, but the first response is that I'm an introvert, I can't do it. I just can't talk to people. So how would you give tips to introverts? Because I feel that sometimes introverts, even when they really want to, they sometimes maybe can't apply the tips that we talked about. Like they may not be able to demonstrate the perfect body language because they themselves are extremely nervous. So how can introverts start networking?
So I think prepare and plan is key. And look, it's not difficult for introverts. I mean, they may not be as spontaneous as the extroverts, but networking is really not that difficult. And I think it'll also do well to remember that in a room full of people, expect almost half of them to be introverts. So you're not alone to start with. I think that should, first of all, make you a little less nervous. The person you are approaching could well be an introvert as well. So very important, again, be yourself. And I know I'm repeating myself, but there is no greater turnoff than trying to be what you are not. So no point in trying to act like an extrovert. It's only a personality type, nothing more. Just because you're an introvert, you are not lesser than an extrovert. If smaller settings make you more comfortable, then that's what you should aim for. Try and set up something yourself, invite just a few people over. And I spoke about planning, so plan ahead. Try and see if there's a friend you can attach to yourself who can help you with introductions and a few ice-breaking questions. Or if you have to do this yourself, then prepare your questions ahead to avoid those awkward silences that we all dread. So know your audience, do a little bit of homework and try and mingle. Stay for a while in a conversation and then but don't overstay because that makes everybody feel uncomfortable, especially when everybody is trying to network and meet as many people as possible in the room. And I've noticed, and I say this mostly because with introverts, I would say that if you've established a comfort zone, then you try to stay in that comfort zone for a little longer than perhaps an extrovert would. So don't do that. Pull yourself out of that situation and kind of mingle more, move on after you've spoken to somebody for a while. But having said that, I think some of the strongest relationships that I have had has been with introverts. They take their time, and because it doesn't come easy, I think they tend to build a lot more deeper and stronger relationships. So, and introverts also need to they need to make networking a part of their lives. So, extroverts can just do it anywhere and everywhere. But with introverts, I think make a conscious effort of indulging in it. And I say indulging because it needs to be a lot of fun, and hence the word indulge in it. And put it in your calendar that, okay, so many hours in the week or in a fortnight. So after a little while, it'll start getting a lot more comfortable.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think this will be really, really helpful to our introvert viewers. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, so I think you've already mentioned one in the beginning of the interview, but is there any network experience that has made a major positive impact in your life, either professionally or personally?
So look, the regular stuff that I can tell you about is that most of my jobs have practically landed on my doorstep because of this wonderful network that is a part of my life. And it's almost like a joke in the family about how hard it is for me to get jobs. But I think the example that I'd like to talk about is a very personal one, and I don't think I've ever shared this in a public space. And how my network, my friends, acquaintances, they kind of reached out was really overwhelming, and it gives me goosebumps even now just thinking about it. So it's a personal story. 3 years ago, I lost my dog. He was snatched while he was being walked practically outside of my house. And this was late in the evening, and I was clueless about what I should do next. My husband was traveling. I was all by myself. I was in a complete flap, and I just didn't know where to start. So, and someone just put together this scary-looking list in front of me and said, you get the media to write about it, lodge an FIR with the police, get posters printed, target social media, and let's just spread the word and let's just get started. And it all seemed impossible to me because this was late in the evening, and I was like, there's no way I can do all of this by myself. And surprisingly, and I give all the credit to my network and friends, by the end of the next day, all of this was made possible. The next morning, the story was splashed in some of the leading print publications. The broadcast media covered it. The digital media covered it. Ms. Menaka Gandhi was informed by, I have no idea who, because I was struggling with lodging an FIR with the police. She called up the police station and she made sure they lodged an FIR. Posters were printed by friends and acquaintances and posted all over the place. The posts on social media went viral. I mean, there were friends who had this great following, and they got a whole range of people to kind of talk about this. And 4 days later, we found our dog. So, and the reason I kind of quote this very unusual situation also is to highlight that, while we believe, and I've also said this a few times earlier on also, that we all believe that networks are all about our profession, but that's not entirely true. The borders are fluid, like I said, and do remember it's a give and take relationship, and what you give is eventually what you take out of it. So I think it's very important for us to build those personal relationships as well.
Thank you so much for sharing this story, ma'am. It really shows the value of networking. Yes, ma'am. So it brings me to my second question. So, ma'am, so this is about, to be able to successfully network, we're expected to in some way, earn the trust of individuals who are trying to network with, as well as make a good impression. So what are your tips on making a strong first impression? And as well as if you could share some of your share how to make good impressions on interviews, and you also take the interviews for the Chevning scholarships. So maybe as of some tips as to how people can make a strong first impression on such interviews that are really important in their lives.
Okay, so I think let's talk about some of the common elements in networking and interviews. So dress well, and I think it's cliched, and a lot of people will say this to you. Some might think it's quite shallow, but I think your question, since it is about first impressions, and who you are meeting knows nothing about you so far. So whether you like it or not, I think it's important that you do dress well. Good eye contact. I think it's an air of confidence, which is not to be confused with overconfidence. And these are important both for networking and a first impression during the interviews as well. Gently easing yourself into the situation. So no loud comments or movements. Just be really, just ease yourself into the situation with a lot of confidence. A firm handshake, of course, not during the pandemic. Good body language, and don't forget to smile. I think, and this is also something that I would like to tell people who sit on the other side of the table, especially during an interview. And I include myself because it's during because I do like you said, I do a lot of interviews. Please smile, even if you're sitting on the other side of the table. I mean, the aim of the interviewer is to find the finest person for a job or a scholarship. So you have to help the person who's sitting in front of you to bring out the best of what they represent. So it's our duty, I think, to help them relax and not get nervous. And I can never comprehend the seriousness with which some interviews are conducted at all. And I think so, just going back to the list, I think beyond the body language research, learn about the people that you're meeting. If you're interviewing, the organization, the job, what are you applying for? Who are the kind of people that you will be working with? Think about the questions that you might ask in either of the situations, both networking and for an interview, and keep your goals clear. So whether it is about landing a job or it is about expanding your network, just make sure that your goals are clear and you stay focused. Keep your introductions simple and keep them honest. Not more than a minute in either case, because questions will follow. If you make that 1 minute interesting, questions will follow and people will want to know a lot more about you during the course of the conversation or the interview. So don't oversell yourself, just relax and enjoy the process.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. I think this is also something that's going to be very beneficial for all of our viewers who are going to take interviews in the future. Ma'am, so my another question is that how can we build networks that last? So even after building networks, how do we make sure that they are sustainable and they are there for a long time?
Yeah, I think that's an important question as well, because a large number of us just like to have a whole lot of names in our network, and then we don't try and sustain them very well. I think mutual respect, first of all, is key. It helps to put others first. So focus on your abilities and the value that you add to the relationship. So this is slightly more complex than it appears. So you need to kind of deep dive into your past experiences to draw out what your expertise may have been, and then share that with the network. You have to offer something unique, is what I'm saying, so that you're not just another cog in the wheel. Try not to ask all the time. Focus more on the giving part as well. That's a great way to sustain relationships, because when you have given, people don't forget you. When you have asked, people will tend to move on because, well, they've done their bit for you. They think they've taken care of people who are in their network. So give, build trust, and of course listen. I think it's only when you listen hard, you understand backgrounds, you understand strengths, needs, that you will further be able to connect people also with each other. And that lies at the heart of good networking. So remember, networks are not just about you and another person. Networks are about you also being able to connect that other person with the other people in your network. So when you do that, every time you try and make a connection, you are sustaining and making that network stronger, because you've done something for two other people and not just one other person. And build deeper relationships, like I say, and spend a lot of time with people who you meet, stay in touch. And I think like I said, I can never say this enough. Just reconnect often, be responsive, focus more on quality rather than the quantity. So it is not important how many people you know, but how well you know them. That helps sustain long relationships.
Yes, ma'am. I think reciprocity is also something that's really essential in networking. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, so YCM, as we know, focuses on conflict management and dispute resolution. So we'd like to ask you a question as to what do you think about the statement that dispute resolution skills are life skills?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think dispute in professional and personal space is inevitable. So people will differ in thought, opinion, interests, personalities, expectations. So disputes are just bound to arise in all sorts of situations. And some amount of conflict is healthy, because it's an indication that people are engaging and interacting with each other. I mean, it would be really boring to have absolutely no conflict, whether it's in teams or it's in personal relationships. But if it is allowed to fester and remain unsolved, these small differences, small petty differences and misunderstandings, these will lead to severely damaged relationships. So life skills like empathy, respect for self and for others, the courage to say no when you want to say no, to speak up for yourself and for others, and zero tolerance for bullying, harassment, and discrimination. These are all dispute resolution skills as well. So they will help resolve dispute and I think help you navigate through life. So I completely agree with the statement dispute resolution skills are life skills for sure.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, do you think that dispute prevention skills are also life skills as to how people can prevent disputes?
So prevention, I believe, is always better than the cure. And I think the best approach would be to try and prevent disputes in the first place. So by promoting a culture of trust and respect, open communications and fairness. So and these are all essential life skills in any case. So the kind of time and effort that is invested when things go wrong and then when resolutions have to kick in, I think I would choose prevention over resolving any day. So, and it is critical for very strong relationships because when you're constantly mending, when you have disputes, you're constantly trying to mend and then move forward in a relationship, and that kind of slows down the progress and how strong your relationship could have been if there had been no disputes and if those disputes could have been prevented in the first place. So laying this foundation, a strong foundation of trust where you can avoid the dispute altogether, I think is a much better way to go forward.
Yes, ma'am, definitely. Ma'am, and also, can you also share with us a situation in your career in which a dispute happened, and if it were not managed, it would have detrimental consequences?
So I think from experience, what I can say is that first of all, I think it's very important, and it's a skill. Dispute management is prevention or resolution is definitely a very important skill. And sadly, what I have seen around also is that it's very commonly assumed that leaders have this inbuilt dispute resolution or prevention skills, and should a situation arise, they will rise to the occasion and resolve conflict. And this is such a common mistake. And I think people need to be trained, as do the leaders. And I think a number of organizations are now beginning to realize the importance of dispute prevention and dispute resolution, and then take necessary action. And I think I've seen it around very often in my line of work as well. When petty issues are left unattended, they fester, and I've seen some brilliant employees leave because disputes couldn't be prevented or resolved for sheer lack of will or ability. So it's absolutely. I mean, and I'm sure a lot of us go through situations like this over issues that could have easily been avoided.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. I think that brings us to the end of our interview. I would again like to thank you so much for giving us time and being a part of this interview series. We from the entire YCM family, we truly appreciate you giving us time and giving us such valuable insights that our viewers are going to find extremely helpful in the field of networking.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I wish all of you at YCM the very best, and I hope you all do well. You're also a part of my network. The reason I'm here today is because you are all a part of my network, and that's why you invited me here. So it's been a pleasure to talk to all of you, and all the very best to you as well.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, and bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye.